see.
No, really. I asked, you if you could, talk for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes about the manufacturing, lenses in space, in the
Yeah.
context of the article that I mentioned last week. Other than that,
Yeah.
uh, I was just looking at, I found this is yet another. Its title is Reason. It's from 2022 and December actually of 2022, um, and this was after introduced Skydo, and somehow I skipped actually here. The FCC regulating all the satellites, and I skimmed it, and obviously it makes sense. It's communications, and I was gonna ask you, uh, about your opinion on that. Clearly, now there are a lot of, I mean, almost all the telecom, companies uh, are at least introducing, at a minimum, messaging.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if not
Everything. Everything.
regular, calls, but at least messaging. So I don't know if you would like to say a few things about that or not.
Sure. Oh, I'm happy to. I think it's hey, Cabana.
Hello.
I think
Hey,
it's
Gavana.
I think when all this direct to cell phone, direct to device is just going to be massive because the carriers, the terrestrial carriers, the Verizons of the world, and the AT&Ts and the T-Mobiles, that's what they all want because they're in a fight to grab more content in the transmission of content. So everybody's got a network
Correct.
they want to put stuff across, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's going to just get larger and larger, and I think that the FCC, unfortunately, sees its role as just trying to put as many guardrails and regulations in place as they possibly can to drive more revenue. I think they're using an old system. There's been a lot of discussion and I would say active exchange in the space community just about the FCC, the FAA, wanting to have a governance role on what goes on off the planet. Um, and it's just a completely different set of variables that have to be taken into consideration. But it's this notion of, oh, let's just push it into an existing bucket and give them more money and create another bureau under a bureau. And I think the space economy needs some fresh structure with fresh ideas that's built for now, not for the 1940s. So there's a lot of things that they've created. I think the FAA and the FCC got together and decided they wanted every satellite to have end of life strategy or insurance so that something happens there. They want them all to have liability insurance in case they bump into somebody. So they're creating all these costs, and you could argue that it isn't or it isn't necessary. That's a separate argument. But what it's doing is it's killing the small companies because small companies just can't afford all of this cost. And so the rich get richer. They've got the critical mass to be able to pay for all these things. Startups in the new space economy, it's a barrier. And anyone that thinks that the government cares about how well these young companies are doing, it's all about the revenue. And that's what those agencies are doing. They just want to control everything, and it's the small players who get hurt the most when in things like this. So it does hamper. Yeah, I'm not against regulation, but at least make it appropriate for who you're regulating. you know, Not this blanket um, type of a policy. I think there's going to be some big changes coming in those agencies as we go forward. Um, it just won't be any sexy headlines for it. On the construction side, orbital. This is one of the big things that both the government and the commercial sector want to see happen very quickly, because for the government, the military wants to be able to do a lot of things in orbit without having to launch all the time. So the notion of building things up there and sourcing materials off the planet is part of this big closed loop design that they're chasing, that says find what you need, refine it, build what you need all up there. Um, don't have to launch. That affords you a lot of things, including maybe an environment where it could be easier to do things in the secret, um, as opposed to, under the watchful eyes of dozens of spy satellites and nefarious characters walking around on your soil. So it does offer, at least for now, some semblance of secrecy for manufacturing. But it's going to be a long time. It's We'll see some robotic stuff set up that's self-managing, that's autonomous, independent, a little something, phone booth, bus size something, that will go up with what it needs and first demonstrate this ability to have that autonomous little factory produce something in orbit. So they first need to learn a bit more about what a factory in near weightlessness would operate like and look like. And there's a lot of work being done on it now, but I'm just saying this is going to be a walk before you run process.
So do you think that actually maybe the robots actually deployed
Yeah,
to
I think
this for obvious reasons, radiation, gravity, or and all of that to manufacture actually some of this stuff in space?
I think the bulk of it will be robotic. Yeah, I think the bulk of it will be robotic. I think you'll have human operations managers in a pressurized environment watching, but we've learned a lot with Robonaut and other capabilities we put on the station. These robotic capabilities for going outside. So Robonaut does the repairs on the outside of the station, and it slides around out there and does things so that humans don't have to always go out and do it. I think these factories are going to be. We know a lot about robotic manufacturing already, so we've got a wealth of knowledge there. So everything about robotic manufacturing can operate just fine in that same environment. They don't need to breathe, they don't need to eat, they don't need to take days off. So,
Exactly. They don't get sick.
No, they don't.
No.
So I could see where that's going to be the bulk of it. Same thing for, when we get around to resource development and mining and things of that nature, it'll be robotic. You might have some people out there, but the risk to human life for a lot of this stuff is so high that the preference is going to be keep the humans inside where it's safe and have really good robotic capabilities. And I think we will. I think we're probably there already, frankly. I think with some of the stuff that's been developed.
Dan, kind of on the direct to cell part, Apple said this week that in their next version of iOS, it's iOS 18, that I think all phones will have text messaging capabilities. So that's a pretty big update for them.
Yeah, this will be a race of features now, right? Just like it was with cameras early on for phones. Who can do what on their phone? Or I remember when the 5G capable phones, were coming and say, "Oh, okay, you'll be ready for it when it happens." And the reality is, devices are just going to become more and more and more central, if that's possible, because I think pretty much everyone's attached to theirs already. But I think that this notion of continuing to collapse everything there, cutting out a lot of terrestrial infrastructure, which could be interesting because it could free up terrestrial infrastructure for other uses on the ground. And, frankly, all that old legacy infrastructure becomes a really good backup system in the event that we have things happen to our satellites. I've seen when I was in London last fall, there was a big debate about, getting rid of natural gas, like removing it from everyone's lives. And they were literally talking about ripping out the piping in the city of London for gas.
Wow.
Like every single building, rip the pipes out. And it's like, and the debates on the radio were hysterical. Like, who are these lunatics? They're going to take one of the oldest cities in the world that has piping in it, and you're going to rip the pipes out. What are you trying to do? What point are you trying to make?
Senseless.
So what are they going to replace it with? I mean, if they get rid of it, so what is the alternative?
All that renewable energy that they're promoting that, I don't know what they're going to do, but it's not going to be. I mean, look at England, look at London. You're not going to run that city on wind or solar, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. So,
I mean, sufficient actually capacity.
Electricity. No, they just wanted everybody to use electricity. Suddenly, electricity is the cheapest, most efficient thing we have. I don't know where that came from, but last time I checked, you still have to do a lot of things to generate it. And, not everybody has hydroelectric capability the way we have, and the way the Canadians have, especially, but the way we have in North America. So, yeah, these are cart before the horse. Let's cancel the space shuttle before we have a ride to the space station that we paid for. Let's, cancel this before we have another option in place. So, yeah, I think it's just tough. It's just really, really going to be tough, I think, in a lot of sectors as we go forward. But the cell phone industry is just going to continue to expand. I'm going to be curious to see what this does to phone cost or to service costs, because phone costs are somewhat irrelevant these days, but because you're just signing up for the forever plan with your carrier.
Right.
But, so I'm going to be curious to see if there's pressure put on the price of these phones, since not many people are doing single purchases for those phones.
Dan, on the Apple deal, they're working with Globalstar. I think that's the constellation powering the text direct to cell. And there's Globalstar, I guess, is building out another constellation for Apple, I guess. So they're able to run text. They'll be able to run text messaging on what's there already, and then maybe the next generation power, phone calls, data, pictures, that type of thing. That's the idea.
Yep. Yeah, everybody's trying to get mated up with a constellation, and there will be some new ones. Who knows how long it is before the telecoms, the terrestrial telecoms, start buying satcoms, as an example. Mm-hmm. Or some coming together in the telecom capital letters industry. Because they're getting closer and closer together. They're more dependent on each other. And we all know how this works in business. They get together, they do business, they're in a similar industry, they're relying on each other. Gee, let's just buy it and take the risk off the table.
Yeah.
Of,
right.
Having to renegotiate all the time to have this capability. Why not just vertically integrate it? And if we thought that antitrust in the days of Ma Bell, for those old enough to remember it, was a big deal, wait till this happens, because this is magnitudes larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Plus, you've got international players and who buys what. It's going to be true global commerce on display here, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, I think, because Apple is going like this direct to cell thing on the device, but then T-Mobile is working with SpaceX to like make it available on the network via Starlink, regardless of the device. I think, any kind of modern 4G phone, they'll use the same spectrum, so it'll be able to talk to the satellite.
Everybody wants to be Intel inside. You know what I mean? They all want to be married to the service so that they just get carried along.
Yeah.
You're just let Dell sell the computer. I'm just going to sit inside and do my thing. Thank you very much. I just have to sell to Dell. I don't have to, but I'll market myself to the consumer so that they want me, but they're going to go looking for a computer maker that isn't me. And I think this is going to be a similar chain of events here with phones. I think you're going to see this multitude of models be thrown out there today, which is what we're seeing, all these different variations and combinations. And then everyone's going to be hunting for a standard of what's the best way to deliver all this. And then everybody will kind of collapse around that. But right now, everybody's jockeying to have the first whatever it is, and no one knows what that is. That's the sad part. Nobody knows what that is.
Other space news. I mean, we had the Starship, basically a successful launch and re-entry last Friday. I think I was standing up and clapping, watching us. So I thought it was pretty amazing.
Very amazing. It's, pretty soon it'll be ho hum, but it's not ho hum for their competition.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Just it's another notch in the belt every time they get a successful launch. And they're probably still having a party at Boeing right now, but it's like, okay, when's the next one? Right. It's Winston Churchill has a saying, success is not final and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And so doesn't matter if you have a win or a loss, just keep going because there's another one coming up next. And so that's how SpaceX operates. It's just whatever happens, stay on schedule. What did we learn? Make some changes, tweak it. Let's go again. We need to see that from Boeing.
Yeah. What do you? So Starships, I just looked it up. Its mass to orbit is 100 to 150 tons to LEO. And then, do you know what the next largest after that is? It ULA's?
Probably. Well,
Atlas or whatever it is.
Well, no, I think you'd have to, for the size of the rocket, you'd have to look at Artemis, and then the Atlases are a good size, but they're not. That's not that class.
Yeah, it just seems like it'll be tough. I mean, I know there's different places for small launch and dedicated launch and that kind of thing, but in terms of the mass market, Starship's all out there on its own right now.
And
once it comes to market,
and you've got this big gap, right? Starship, and then a bunch of small, fleet of foot little inexpensive rockets that are out there doing their thing. And I mean, Fireflies, those guys, even Rocket Lab, but there's nobody in the middle. And no one has decided to fill that gap because it's that sweet spot of either I can be much more profitable. There's a bigger market down here. Otherwise I have to, go big or go home. Yeah. And I have to go build a big sucker that can lift anything.
Right.
And, what the market needs is 2 or 3 big ones. We have them in name. We don't have them in practice. We just have one, and that's SpaceX. But those 2 or 3 could suck up all that heavy lift demand, and we could be launching the daylights out of small sats, CubeSats, and every other mission with everybody else. But what's happening now is it's people that would normally be doing a bigger rideshare or that would look to Starship to piggyback with somebody else. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
So I just, for some perspective here, I looked at last week, Rocket Lab's Electron can haul basically like 3 average sized people to space. It can't haul people, but that's the amount of weight, right?
Yeah.
3 or 4 American male people.
Yeah.
The Starship could haul 1,800.
But by the way,
Yeah.
that's how you put 1 million people on Mars in 50 years.
Right.
Okay. Is a launch a day, 2,000 a day.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's, gee, I've got a whole bunch of people up. Now, will it be
Right.
that much of a cadence? Not for a long time. I mean, I'd be nervous as hell, frankly. But yeah, that's the difference we're talking about.
It's insane.
And the government has a big demand on SpaceX capacity. So with one carrier, this is like just having NASA with ULA or NASA before ULA. And, we're going to put it up on Atlas. We're going to launch out of Vandenberg. They couldn't put stuff up fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can't put stuff up fast enough.
So do you think on the Starship maybe we'll have some commercial launches next year? I think that seems like a reasonable target, perhaps. Probably a few more tests this year. And
the only thing that could mess that up, Bryce, is going to be, if Uncle Sam says, bump those. We need Starship for classified missions. That happens all the time.
Right.
That happens all the time. And I can tell you that the government is buying as well, by the way, just because of our business here. But the satellite capacity from some of the big carriers like SES and Telesat and those, the government has bought up so much of their capacity for those big constellations already that the U.S. government, and I heard this from DOD last week, the U.S. government considers some of these big constellations U.S. government property because they consider that they have invested, not just bought some capacity. They've invested, and they're critical national assets because they're relying on commercial to do a ton of their stuff. So you want to have them as a client, that's great. You'll have money forever. The bad news is, they've just moved into the house with you and they're telling you what to do. Right. So, yeah, but that's how big this is getting. It's getting pretty serious.
Yeah.
The
government's kind of in that way with SpaceX, right? Like they're like mad at Elon, but then they're like, hey, we also want our own private Star Shield internet to power the military, please.
Yeah.
Right.
They're mad at Elon. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then they get down on one knee and say, please.
Yeah. So, Cabana, what you got in the crypto world? There's all kinds of stuff going on, I know. So.
Oh, we were looking fantastic until J-Pal ran his mouth. But, or I guess it was the Fed statement, I guess, that sent things into a tizzy. That was all markets this afternoon. And then, of course, Bitcoin took it the hardest, but we were looking fantastic this morning. As you recall, last week, I was saying like mid to upper 60s, and we pegged it yesterday at like just below 67, had a nice bounce, and kind of did like the Bart Simpson pattern and just gave it all back late trading. So
you ran his mouth today?
I guess the Fed released their statement, so I backtracked on that. So it was like a hawkish statement, and then I guess Powell like maybe walked it back a little bit. I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but the statement was what caused. I think Bryce can confirm that for me.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was as always, or not as always, but
that's the Bart Simpson haircut chart there, intraday. But
they were all over the place. The Fed moved up like their end of year rate projections forecasts by like 50 basis points, like when they asked the people on the committee, hey, where do you think rates are or whatever. So it was pretty hawkish. And, this market's been thinking all year long that we're just going to get a bunch of rate cuts this year. And now they're like hoping for maybe we'll get one or two. And I don't think anything in the Fed's statement, or really even what Powell is saying, is that they're going to cut rates. They're saying, look, inflation's got to get back to 2% or less. We're not there yet. It's trending that way, but it's going slower. And the labor market is still going strong. We have 4% unemployment. They have no reason to cut. And I think the only reason they would is if the economy starts to weaken. So
Agreed.
I don't know what the market's thinking here, but it seems to think it's getting rate cuts.
Yeah, there's the current Bitcoin chart. So I still love the structure of it. I mean, it's just like one day of like an intraday decline, which sucks because we're still right there. Like long term looks good to me. So we'll see. Ethereum too. I still like it. So what's very interesting is yesterday when we did hit that low, if I can find it, there were a lot of liquidations. So like we went right down to some resistance levels, or support levels, I should say, bounced right off of them. And a bunch of people got liquidated. And I find it especially interesting because of this chart, which aligns on the same day. And these are ETF outflows. And wouldn't you know, yesterday, about over 200 million outflowed from ETFs, mark the bottom, and look at when those outflows peak. They all just about mark every bottom in the past like 3 months. So
Wow.
Where's it going? Did you? I haven't been following. Did it go to cash? Did it go to money markets? What happened to money markets?
that I don't know, because I mean,
Because that's because we used to track that in the industry all the time. I'd look
Yeah.
at outflows and inflows, but where's it going?
Yeah.
And you'd see a massive uptick in cash. So people are moving to cash as opposed to trading out of the ETF and into something else.
Yeah.
Because that's the big indicator when you see those liquidations, those redemptions. Are they going to the sidelines, or are they chasing something?
and I mean, with the structure the way it is now, and I mean, you can see it there on that chart specifically. I mean, we've just kind of held this range from 60 to 70, give or take a couple thousand up and down. And it's just like, you're playing with fire, in my opinion, but we'll see. I mean, they could be right, and all of chart logic and everything lining up as beautiful as it seems it could be different this time. But
Well,
again, you got to stick with what works until it doesn't. So
what we don't know, I mean, ETFs are still going through this long maturation of what that product is going to be and how it's going to be used. And if you go back to the beginning, it was just an updated version of the old sector funds from the 80s when they introduced sector funds. Oh, buy our technology fund or our Germany fund. Remember those, the country fund? And so now it's becoming more of a trader's proxy. It's becoming, and this is heresy, but the fact that institutional money managers are buying them, they should all be, fired and lose any income from fees, because they shouldn't be charging fees if they're
Right.
investing in ETFs for a pension fund.
I'm going to charge 2 and 20 and put you in the SPY.
Yeah, it's insane. But my point being is that they're evolving in terms of their impact. So reading them becomes an interesting challenge over time, because we're hearing different things when we see, or we're seeing different things when we look at those charts on ETFs, and depending on what they're in. That's a whole separate set of metrics to track versus their peer group in the corresponding, long stock market, if you will. So ETFs are a fascinating thing to watch. I've been watching them since they came out, but they're just changing all the time, much in the same way options did early on, way back when options were first a thing.
and then soon we'll have Ethereum to talk about. So
Before
Yeah.
today's
You're cutting out some
meeting, I looked at the federal transactions last. Sorry, am I cutting out? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're breaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're breaking out.
All right. I think now, yeah, now it's okay.
Okay.
So I looked at the transactions, and so Cody is not here. So, but even though he's not here, I won't give numbers. So we did add more subscribers, if you will. More people bought SKTLs, and a few of them actually were in the order of like 2 million SKTLs. So so there is a slight bump, if you will, upwards in the total number of token holders.
Wow,
Just FYI.
That's great.
awesome.
Thanks.
Kaban, did you see that? I guess Trump reportedly met with the Bitcoin miners like Riot and those executives.
Only
And-
USA should mine Bitcoin.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that a real quote? I guess I saw that headline. I don't know.
I don't know, because so many things that guy says are taken out of context.
Oh, I know.
But a lot of things you don't need to take out of context, because some of the things he says are just great. So I would not be surprised if he said he wants all the Bitcoin to be made in the USA. That would just be fantastic.
Yeah. Instead of the CHIPS Act, we're gonna have the
Make Crypto Great Again Act.
Yeah. That's right.
That will never happen. So.
Subsidized crypto miners. Make sure
I agree with you, but it was just funny that he's on this train now, and he gets like there's some serious money from this industry that can support him, and the other side is terrified of it because they did an immediate pivot and improved that Ethereum ETF.
Well, he's trying to also look at the fact that there may be an advantage for the country, depending on its role in this currency. In much the same way that the U.S. dollar has its world position. And, I think any world leader should be thinking about that, frankly, because it's going to get very interesting very soon. And is there a geopolitical angle?
Yep. I mean, if you don't take advantage of it, or at least, have it, in your playbook, you're doing something wrong, because somebody else or a lot of other countries are going to take advantage of it. So just to try to completely ignore it, or be as hostile as the current administration has been towards it, is just a complete and total blunder. I think Novogratz called it like it could be one of the worst own goals in history if they screw this up. So I think that's accurate. I don't necessarily agree with him on some stuff, but he's right on that.
Well, it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, next 6 months, 5 months are going to be wild. So
it doesn't feel like an election year yet.
Wait.
It will in a few weeks, I think. Yeah.
If I see one more corner full of signs and, sandwich board guys, I'm going to drive off the road and kill myself. Yeah. It's just, and I'm just waiting for the evening news ad barrage. Yeah. That's when I stop watching local television is during election season.
Well, we subscribe to volleyball league.
We're losing you, Sinatsi.
We lost you again. All we heard was we subscribe to. And
what do you subscribe to?
I was waiting. I noticed. Yeah, Nations Volleyball League, the men's and women's volleyball, actually worldwide. And we were both, my wife and I, were really sick and tired of basically seeing, the exact, similar news, in one group of channels, and then another, similar news in another group of channels. Yep. So we're literally not watching. We're trying to watch, the games most of the time. So.
Right. Yeah. Information overload. Well, I have to run.
Cool.
Yes, we're way over 4:30.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody.
Good
as
seeing
always,
everybody.
yeah, it's good to see you guys, and we'll be back same time next week.
You got it. Be safe out there.
I'll
See
be
ya.
on the road, but I will try to make it. But if not, that's where I
All
will
right.
be. But
Yes.
thanks, guys.
Bye.